Dr. Carmel Clancy. I am the current director of the Center for Credentialing and Accreditation, which is part of ICUDDR. If you're interested in understanding more about ICUDDR, I would suggest you look at the www.icuddr.org website. We're not going to be going into that detail today, but that is where we live. That is part of our family. And if you're interested in understanding and knowing who ICUDD are, I invite you to check that group out separately. This afternoon or this morning or evening session is going to be predominantly looking at the global badge of credibility, we're calling it the ICAP, but really the nuts and bolts. We have, as we took over from Columba Plan, those of you who know our history, we've been in very much a review and restructuring and cleaning up and tidying up and perhaps enhancing the entire process, including our online applications. So we're very keen to engage with our constituents to understand what it is that we can do better for you, but also to make the process easier and to answer any specific questions you may have. So this is meant to be, although it feels probably quite formal because we are going to do an initial presentation, but we really would like this to be a conversation. So as informal as possible, so that we can really get to know you and you can get to know us and recognize that we're here actually to support and to help you. So the title of this particular session, which I hope you will find amusing, is Measure Twice, Cut Once. I think a lot of carpenters go with that principle, that better always to keep checking and make sure you get it right before you cut your wood. So that's really where that term comes from, if you're not familiar with it. I'm also very pleased to, before we get into the details of the session, just to recognize and invite my colleagues from the centre to say hi. I know many of you will already know maybe the names, you'll maybe even know the faces, but you haven't actually heard them before. So if I can quickly just ask Ashley Becker to say hello, and then I'll go to Samitha and then to Sungjoo. So Ashley?
Yes, good morning, everyone. At least from my end, it is around 6 o'clock in the morning here. And so I'm glad to be able to be on and to see all of you. My job is a senior program officer with CCA. I tend to manage our online application portal and then we have our database systems and the website. I work with some of my other colleagues to keep it managed and maintained. I do my best to help coordinate our digital presence to support the overall global credentialing mission. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you, Ashley. Samitha?
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I'm Samitha Gunasekera, Senior Program Officer of CCA. As a senior program, I have been working for the CCA GCC more than a decade now. So as a senior program officer, I'm responsible for manage, coordinate, support, and assist with the initiatives related to credentialing of addiction professionals worldwide. And it includes scheduling examinations, reviewing and renewals, and most of the tasks related to credentialing. Thank you.
Thank you, Samitha. And Sungjoo.
Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. My name is Sungjoo Park. I'm one of the newest members of CCA. I've been with CCA for about a year now, both including my internship, and then I've joined full-time this past August. I'm a program officer, and I provide support for the team, whatever work there is. And my primary focus for this team has been a lot of the data analysis, reviewing exam performance, surveys, things like that work with a lot of the quantitative and qualitative data side of this team. And I provide other support administratively as well. So I'm glad to be able to have joined this team and learn so much from it and to help others get credentialed. Thank you. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you, Sungjoo. And hidden away is one of our other colleagues, but not to be forgotten, is Verna. Verna, who actually oversees our entire webinar series, not just this particular one. So we just want to acknowledge Verna, that she's sitting in the background. She's helping and supporting us with this webinar, and will be just observing the chat. So if you have any questions and you feel a little shy and you don't necessarily want to ask a direct question with us, but you would like to know an answer, please just put something into the chat. And as you can see, Verna's just said hi to everybody. So if you have any questions, particularly that you would like us to answer specific to your circumstance, we'd be happy to try and address it while we're with you for the next hour. So if we could begin. So this is really our agenda and the objectives of what we're hoping to cover. So we're going to go through the application and eligibility process. We're going to talk about some of the factors that help build a strong application. You do have opportunities to submit more than once if you're trying to get yourself verified and signed off. But really, we want to try and reduce that burden for you. So here's an opportunity for us to help you understand what are some of the key information or areas that some of our candidates struggle to address fully before they actually get signed off and verified. So my colleagues will be covering that in detail. We'll be obviously laying the groundwork, preparation that pays off, so hints and tips. We're also going to give you a little example if you've not seen the types of questions and the format of the questions, just to kind of put you at ease so you can see the way an exam is laid out. And we will be in future events going through preparation and getting people ready for examination and doing a much more detailed conversation around that. But today, it's really just giving you some hints and ideas, and then we'll be opening up for frequently asked questions. So the objectives pretty much map to that agenda, and hopefully you've had a chance to quickly look at those as I've been speaking. So that I don't waste time, if we go to the next slide. So the sort of quick introduction that I wanted to bring before I get my colleagues to go into the detail is really sort of help you understand why perhaps you might think it's a very arduous process, or you think that we put you through a lot of hoops, so to speak, in order to make your application. But there's a very good rationale, and I'm sure that for most of you, this will not be necessarily new, but it's important to emphasize why we take the approach we take and why we are engaged in the activities and why we have the policies, and indeed why we have the various applications and needs and criteria. So there is a very rigorous process behind this. This didn't just happen. It's not something where we have just made up a couple of questions to test you thinking they're good. We've gone through very rigorous processes with people in the field so that we can align with international standards. And we've had a broad body of people over the years who have assessed and helped and molded what you currently are experiencing, both in terms of the application process, but also the exams themselves. But these are continuously under review so that we can make sure we're in step with the sector and that we are not overly assessing people or being overly critical or providing too many barriers to people accessing this particular credential. But the main reasons why we have such a rigorous process are, as you can see on the screen, really about protecting vulnerable populations. Anybody who carries an ICAP credential, we need to feel comfortable, confident, that you are what that credential represents, that you are somebody that has gone through a process of education, has been able to validate and defend your background, your qualifications, and indeed your character. And so that we can then say that if anybody is currently active on our register with an ICAP, that we are very confident that they are at least upholding the current evidence-based standards for the field and that they have the correct and appropriate character to work with vulnerable populations. So also by going through this rigorous process, we are making sure that we are defining, but not only also defining, but upholding a standard of excellence so that the rigor is designed to distinguish those who meet educational preparation, experience, and ethics. So you can't just say, well, I've worked within the addictions field for 6 months or a year, and I think I'm pretty good. You may be, but it's really important to be able to independently demonstrate that. And then validating the professional competence. A thorough process confirms that all of our applicants do require those knowledge, skills, and attitudes that we believe, and indeed our international community believes, is effective for ethical practice. So if we go to the next slide. So what we're doing in CCA on behalf of ICUDDR and of course our professionals who are registered with us and have the credential is we're ensuring that the quality, credibility and public trust is there, so that when somebody says I have an ICAP, both your employer or your patient or your client, or indeed your government, if it's an organization that is currently sponsoring you, can feel comfortable and confident that you meet the rigors that we have put in place. So it gives that public assurance, not only directly to the patient or client, but of course their families. It gives the reputation to the profession. So if you don't come from a traditional background of nursing or medicine or psychology or social work, for example, but you come from a recovery background perhaps, or you've just come through the ranks, so to speak, in terms of work experience, and you've done your own sort of self-development around education, it gives that rigor so that you can also demonstrate that you have a right to be in the position that you're in and also engaged in this particular work. The employer confidence, as I mentioned, but of course the accountability and ethics. Anybody who breaches our ethics or does not live up to those standards, as you know, we have a process where we actually manage that sort of errant behavior. And we have a complaints procedure that, you know, people who are currently being cared for somebody with an ICAP credential or an employer, they can report that to us, that they do not believe that that person is living up to our standards. And we can then undertake a review process of that individual. And if, and hopefully would not be the case, but if it was warranted, we can remove them from our register, and they would no longer have that ability to say that they're an ICAP professional. So if we go to the next slide. So how the upload, so understanding our application and an exam really. So as you know, the detail is going to be given to you now and more by my colleagues, but the application review evaluates your formal education, your experience and adherence to code, filtering out unqualified applicants. We have very comprehensive exams. As you know, we have an entire suite of ICAP credentials from prevention through to recovery. And we are this summer, towards the end of the summer, about to launch a brand new credential, which we have been trailing for nurses. So it's going to be called the ICAP-RN for registered nurses. And the other important point before I leave you over to my colleagues is to talk about continued professional development. Whilst all of us, and myself included, have been in the industry, so to speak, for over 30 years, that doesn't mean that I can stop learning. That doesn't mean that I, just because I might have a doctorate or I have a master's and I feel that I've done very well in my education, that I have kept myself up to date. One of the absolute benefits of having a credential and maintaining your credential is you are demonstrating to your community, both at the level of the patient or client or the employer, or indeed your government or a professional organization, that you have continued to maintain your knowledge. You have maintained up-to-date information. You're engaging in lifelong learning. And as we all know, in this particular sector, substance use continues to evolve. Issues around different substances continue to evolve. And as we move now into a much more AI technical world, we all need to be understanding what that's going to be bringing in the 21st century. So we never stop learning, and our credential is there really to protect that and to remind us. And as you know, you must renew every 3 years, that you must take and undertake ongoing development to maintain that credential. And really that's embedded in that whole idea of lifelong learning, and not making an assumption that you, just because you've taken one exam, you're good to go. So I'm going to stop at that point. Hopefully that gives you a good flavor of the principles and some of the rationale as to why we have such a rigorous process. And I'm very pleased now to hand over to my colleague Sungjoo, who's going to take you through building a strong application. Thank you so much. Sungjoo.
Thank you, Carmel. So thank you, everyone. So the first part of this presentation or this info session, we covered why the process exists and the importance of the process. So now what I'll be covering is what the process actually entails and what we're looking for on the reviewer side as the CCA staff, and then some common mistakes and that we encounter and that we see and how to avoid them. So first and foremost, I'm just going to overview the ICAP credentialing process. So the first step will be to join the ICEP Global Network. That will enable you to have access to all the UTC, UPC, and URC courses that you can take for free online. The second step is to take those courses and to earn your required hours and then meet the eligibility criteria for the proposed credential. From there, you'll submit your work experience, your CV, resume, letter of recommendation, so on and so forth. There's again, as Carmel mentioned, a rigorous process for the documentation that we need for the application. Step 4 will be to submit the application, and from there we'll review it from our end. And if you do get approved, then step 5 you'll take the exam either in your local area in your country or through online remote proctored exams. Step 6, the successful candidate will be issued the credential and placed onto the live register with renewal for every 3 years. So if you're unfamiliar, the live register is essentially a register that we keep updated constantly to see if your credential is updated or if it's about to expire, if a professional has retired. So on the employee standpoint, you can place yourself onto the register by passing the exam. And if an employer would like to verify that you have earned the credential, they are able to do so. So it kind of creates some legitimacy. From there, you'll renew, and for the renewal process, essentially you just go over step 2 and step 3 again, and then step 4, we will look over your renewal documentation. And obviously, from step 5, if you are unable to pass the exam, then you would repeat the process. So again, to see what a satisfactory application is, we'll share with you some of the categories that we are looking for to satisfy what the eligibility criteria. And really quickly, I do want to cover some of the ICAP qualifications. So each credential has different qualification levels that I can't cover in detail right now, given our time, but I will share the link to our website where you can review where you stand. But for example, the ICAP Treatment 1 level, the minimum education level is at least a high school diploma with 120 training hours and 1 year of experience. But that steps up a lot when you get to ICAP Treatment 4, where the minimum requirement of education is a master's degree, and then 500 training hours and 5 years of experience. So you can see there's this hierarchical process as you go up the ladder. So elements of a satisfactory application, what we are looking for on our end, obviously, the first one is a signed code of ethics. As professionals in this field, whether you're working clinically or administratively, you always have to follow this code of ethics. The second one is a certified qualifications of contact hours of education and training of ICAP examinations. So this is what I mentioned earlier about the 120 training hours or 240 or 500 training hours. Number 3 is a detailed CV or resume of candidate highlighting highest education and the dates and work experience. Number 4 is a letter of a recommendation from a clinical supervisor. Especially what we're looking for is verification of the years of experience. This candidate has worked for 5 years under my supervision, as an example. We're also looking for kind of a brief description of what your daily responsibilities are, things like that. Number 4 is a narrative description. So here you will be providing a short testimonial or a statement of what you do in your daily work, or a case example of the work that you do in your given responsibility. The next one is a certified true copy of a school or university certificate. So again, when I mentioned the minimum education level, you'll be submitting that diploma or certificate that you received after completion of that education level. And then the last one is a government issued photo ID. So this can be a driver's license or a driving license. It could be a passport, it could be a national ID, so on and so forth. So now that we've gone over what a satisfactory application looks like, I'll quickly cover the common mistakes that we see for each of these categories and how to avoid them. So the first one, which is one of our biggest ones, is insufficient training hours and expired training hours. So we have a minimum requirement that the training hours need to be from the last 5 years. A lot of times candidates will think that training that they received 6, 7, 8 years ago suffice. Unfortunately, it doesn't, since we want to keep the relevance of the information constantly. So we need to make sure that those training hours are within the 5-year period. So, for example, if we're in 2025, the latest training hours that you could submit would be from 2020. And insufficient training hours. This is another big one. And to please make sure to calculate your hours to ensure that you meet the minimum level. The resume and CV does not include enough details or relevant information. There are a lot of times that the resume or CV does not include the years of experience worked, the date that you worked in that position, or the dates that the candidate attended their minimum qualification or education level. Third one is the letter of recommendation. So this is what I mentioned earlier. Verified years of experience, official organization letterhead, and signature from direct clinical supervisor. This one is a big one, since we need to be able to make sure that this letter was actually written by a clinical supervisor and not someone else. Narrative description needs more detail. This is what I mentioned earlier. Again, sometimes we receive one sentence statements saying I work in substance use. That will not suffice. We need a little more detail. What do you do? What are your daily responsibilities? What's a case example of a client that you helped? Things like that. Submitting academic transcripts instead of official diplomas or certificates. This is something that we run into a lot as well. We need to see the official diploma with the organization stamp or signature from the dean, so on and so forth. A lot of the times we'll receive academic transcripts that'll show the grade, the hours, things like that. Unfortunately, that does not suffice since it doesn't show us that you've actually completed your education. It shows us the various courses that the candidate has taken. And the last one is a pretty easy one, no photo ID attached. One of the biggest things that we see sometimes is that sometimes the photo ID is illegible and we can't view it on our end online, or if there's just nothing attached. So this one is pretty easy to make sure that you have that covered. So these are a lot of the things that we are looking for on our end to make sure that your application gets approved. So this is kind of the filtering process. So if you look online and you see the eligibility criteria and things that we're looking for, just please make sure that that is our standard operating procedure for reviewing these applications. So now I'll be passing it off to my colleague, Ashley.
Thank you, Sungjoo. So we're going to move on to talking about how we prepare for the actual exam and the things that you can do ahead of time to get you ready for actually sitting and taking that examination. You go to the next slide, Sungjoo. Perfect. So we kind of divide these into the fact that certification success really comes down to good planning and good science. So the first and foremost thing is you want to plan ahead. Make sure you complete all your required training and experience with ICAP exam, which Sungjoo outlined. And we also have put the links in the chat there. And we also have some additional templates there that you can reference. You want to assess your current knowledge. You want to register early. And you want to set yourself up with a clear study plan. And that includes being able to do the required training and be able to know where you're starting, to know if your knowledge has grown to the point to where you're ready to sit and take the exam. Next, you want to study smart. You don't want to just read passively. You want to use the materials we have available on our website under the credentialing section. But you also want to include methods backed by science, like active recall, spaced repetition, and even teaching others. If you're going over the information that you've learned with somebody else, it's a way of being able to confirm that you've retained that. And if you haven't, to go back and be able to go over it again before the exam. These strategies are shown to boost retention and understanding. And all this information can be found on our website and these different tips. And then for both good science and good planning, manage your time. And as my colleagues can tell you, this is my favorite part, making a plan, having a timeline. You want to use focus techniques, like there are different methods that we show on the site that will help guide you during your prep for the exam and the preparation for on the exam day, and relying on different strategies to keep calm, to stay efficient, and to maximize your score. You want to make sure you give yourself a plan that is reasonable with everything else you have going on. And so that way, you know when you're ready to take the exam versus just you feel like you have to rush and get to it. You want to make sure you have all of these steps in place so that you can have a successful exam versus just pushing yourself to be ready before you actually are. So with intentional planning and evidence-based study habits, you'll be positioned for certification success. So do you want to go to the next step? And the next one. And we just want to talk to you a bit now about what to expect from the actual exam. First, ICAP exams are designed to assess not just what you know, but how well you can apply that knowledge in real-world scenarios. It's primarily a multiple choice exam with real-world scenarios and actual specific questions based upon the UTC curriculum. It's based upon these programs because these programs form the backbone of the exam content, and that they're science-based, and they're also based upon the experiences you would have faced throughout your career and your clinical experience as well. That said, while these recommended training resources, you're not only limited to them, you can study other high quality materials as long as they align with the same core competencies. Finally, it's important to know that ICAP credentials are internationally recognized and aligned with global standards. That means your certification carries weight across borders and contributes to professional credibility worldwide. Next slide, Sungjoo. And so these next two slides basically give you the overall breakdown, just us digging a little bit deeper. And it shows you the different number of questions for the examination, how much time we spend on the exam, what the passing scores are. And these are also available on our website under the credentialing section, if you want to go back and reference so you don't have to write all of these down. So for each of the treatment levels, we have the exams are 3 hours long. And as you can tell, ICAP 1 is the only exam that has 125 questions, but ICAP 2 through 4 have 150 questions. All of the exams, including prevention and recovery support, are 3 hours. And each of the levels have a varying degree of a passing score. And so you want to be mindful of that as you're going into your exam, of what you're actually trying to aim for. And then for treatment, you have the 5 core domains that the exam is divided into. These are weighted differently by level, and understanding these can also help you prioritize your study time and as you go through your training. So we have it divided from orientation to the treatment process, assessment, treatment planning and implementation, addiction counseling and practice skills, and professional practices. Now you'll notice that the percentages of those domains vary depending on the level of the ICAP exam for treatment. And Sungjoo, if you'll go to the next slide, you'll notice that prevention and recovery support, their domains are slightly different. And so you want to be mindful of that. Like the difference between treatment and recovery support and prevention obviously emphasizes different skills in different areas. And so you want to actually probably spend the amount of time that you need depending on what kind of exam you're taking and take these into account. So you have, like, for the prevention, the domains are community problem identification, community needs assessment, evidence-based prevention strategies and programs, implementation cycle planning, monitoring and evaluation versus recovery support, roles of recovery support professionals, basic concepts, pharmacology, and professional issues. Now, all of these were established based upon the training that you would receive with UTC and the UPC and the URC. So they echo that and how that's balanced in that training as well. And you'll be able to always go back and reference these as you're going through your studying habits. So we wanted to talk to you a little bit about how to also analyze the questions that are in the examination. Because you can do everything that you need to do to get to the exam, and when you're sitting there, it's helpful to know ahead of time a few tips to be able to help you process things as you're under an immense amount of stress when you sit for the exam. So the first thing we say is we understand the exam format. So all of our exams are formatted in multiple choice questions, and they each have 4 possible answers. And we recommend that you pick the best option. So in the questions, you can always look for keywords like first, best, or most appropriate. These words change the meaning of the question. You can use the process of elimination. Start by removing obviously incorrect answers. And then when unsure, rely on your logic and reasoning. Often even partial knowledge can help you find the best choice. We also recommend that you leave yourself time in the exam to go back over any skip questions. When you're sitting for the examination, if you're going through the questions and reading them and you get stuck, we recommend leaving that question, moving on to the next one, and then giving yourself enough time at the end to go back and then complete those questions. And to make sure you don't leave anything blank, because we want to make sure that you use the full amount of time and be able to go through it as best as possible. We also recommend that taking practice sample questions is critical. Don't just memorize answers to the test. Focus on why one answer is better than others. It's how you build real test taking confidence, and you get to a place where you feel comfortable going into the exams. So what we have done is we prepared a few sample questions to be able to show how we go through them and how we got to those answers. And so I will turn that over to Dr. Clancy.
Okay, thank you so much, colleagues. So hopefully up to now the information is helpful, and continue to give us your feedback as you're hearing this information and any other thoughts you may have. So really, just to give you a flavor of, you've just heard that, it's a multi-choice, 4 answers. There are no trick questions. Often we're asked, oh, are there some trick questions to try and, sort of make it a little bit difficult? We can absolutely guarantee there is no intent to make any trickery to the exam. We come in with clean hands, as they say. We're here to try and get you to the best outcome. So ultimately, all of these questions that are designed have been tested, have been piloted, and have been signed off. They are subject to review, and they will continue to be subject to review. So thank you, Dr. Joseph, for your suggestion on getting feedback from the field. We certainly will take that under advisement, but it is something that is continuous. But here's just some examples for you, just to give you a flavor, and also to show you and differentiate how perhaps prevention exams look different to the treatment exams. So here are 2 sample questions. And I want to emphasize, you've just heard from colleagues about the importance of how we have aligned particularly the test items to the UPC, the UTC, and the URC. However, that is the knowledge, theoretical, or the skills side. There is an understanding that anybody taking our credential has to have a field experience. That is one of the crucial parts when you're actually putting in for this exam. So even though you may have prepared for the exam and studied well, if you've not been able to take that knowledge out and really apply it and see what it feels like to do it in the field, you will struggle with these exams. So we really highly recommend that you must do your time in the field in order to bed in your training, your knowledge, and those skills that you've been learning. Otherwise, you will struggle in terms of undertaking these exams. So that's just another hint for you, so that you don't become despondent. It doesn't mean that you're not good at your job or that you haven't prepared. It may well be that you just haven't had what I might refer to as enough flying time. So looking at these prevention sample questions, you can see here which of the following is the most strongly associated with increased risk for substance use during adolescence. Now, all of these, I would suggest to you, are implicated, okay, in terms of risk for substance use during adolescence. But note the question, which of the following is the most strongly associated? So this goes to what Ashley was making reference to. You really need to read your question thoroughly, highlight what is an active question or active part of the question so that you can then look at those responses. And yes, you might say, well, all of them are implicated, but it's the most strongly associated we're looking for, which will be based on evidence and research and studies. Okay, so I'm going to leave that for you to think about and then just move to the next. We will give you the answers in a moment, so we're teasing you a little bit, but have a think about that. The second, research suggests that the most effective school-based substance use prevention strategies focus on. And again, the active part of that is the most effective. Again, you can see, sort of, well, increasing fear or legal consequences, I'll give you a hint, is not the answer. But in some respects, there will be within those questions or those answers, some that you think that actually does work. I know that that works. It is the most effective that this question is asking you to think about. Then if we move over to the ICAP 1 treatment sample, which of the following best describes the collaborative process in which the counsellor and client identify goals and strategies for addressing substance use issues? And again, which of the following refers to the coordination of services and resources to meet a client's overall health and social needs during recovery? So again, just analysing and unpacking those questions, you're looking for the active part of the question so that you can respond appropriately. Next slide. So let's see, did you get them right? So I think you can see them highlighted in the green. So those are the actual correct answers. So tap yourself on the back if you managed to get those. So well done. And if you didn't, don't worry. Maybe you haven't even started doing your training yet. So please don't feel too despondent. So moving to the next set of samples. So here are treatment 2 and treatment 3 in the ICAP. The reason we're showing you the ICAP at the different levels is you can start now to see as you move from a level 1 to a level 2 to a level 3, the questions do become that little bit more challenging and certainly will reflect the complexity of the work that you may be engaged in, the training that you will have undertaken, the complexity of the population and the patients or clients that you're working with. But this is where you will start to note that whilst you may have some of this information, it is all about the application. So how much time have you been in the field where you will be able to discern what might be the correct answer? So again, letting you just take a moment to pause on those questions. Some of them are very factual, as you can see. Which of the following best describes the role of the liver in alcohol metabolism? Is quite a specific response required there. And then you can have, according to cognitive behavioral theory, substance use is primarily the result of, and so forth. So giving you a moment so we can get to some questions if we go to the answers. And there you go. So here you have counselor begins accepting expensive gifts. So we're tapping into ethics at this point and understanding people's ethical behavior and their understanding of how they should be acting as a professional within a vulnerable and working with the vulnerable population. And you can see all of those things are ethical answers in some shape or form, but it's the multiple dual relationships that we were seeking. And then on the cognitive behavioral, just that latter one, you can see it's distorted thinking and learned behaviors related to the CBT. Thank you, Sungjoo. Next questions. So finally, for treatment 4, you can see this is somebody who will have been practicing and working in the field for a considerable period of time. They will be expected to have attained a master's in terms of their education preparation. And here you can see that it's, again, the complexity is probably coming through. So again, if you're not sure of that answer, please don't feel that you shouldn't be working in the field. This is really reflected on educational prep and length of time that people are working in certain roles. But again, you can see in recovery how that's slightly different. This differs from the treatment and the prevention, where we're asking under which of the following conditions is it legally and ethically acceptable for a recovery support professional to break confidentiality. And then the issue of countertransference occurs when. So within a counseling relationship, we're seeking to get people's understanding of the dynamic that can happen between the counselor and the client, and understanding the mechanism of that relationship. So again, just to give you a moment to see whether you've been able to do a self-assessment here on your knowledge. And if we go to the answers, and there you can see the responses. So again, if you've got those right, maybe you were already an ICAP 4 credentialed person, or maybe you're currently studying towards that. And indeed, if you've been working in the recovery field, I suspect that you will have felt very comfortable with both of those questions. I would hope so. So those are the sample questions, just to give you a broad feel. We will, as we said, these will be available on our website. We're trying to move towards really guiding, doing a lot more guidance and hand-holding and preparation around this process for our candidates. So keep an eye on that space, and we will be keeping people updated as we go through and as we build our resource section in preparation for exams and taking the exams. I hope that was helpful. So I think we are at a point now where we're able to open it to everybody that's with us and stayed with us. If you wish to ask a question, just please move ahead and do so. If you want to put it into the chat, please do that also. And I'll pause just to give everybody a moment to reflect on what we've shared with you, and if you have any specifics, or indeed we haven't covered something that you are hoping to hear about today, by all means ask a question. And let's have a conversation, as they say. So we could maybe take the slides off the screen, Sungjoo, so we can open it up. And if anybody wants to turn on their camera, we'd be very happy to see your lovely faces as well, so that might encourage people to engage in conversation. Maybe your tech might not allow you to do that, so we understand often bandwidth is a challenge for some people, but if it's possible, that would be lovely. And as Verna has said, please feel free to unmute and type here, or unmute, and you can raise your hand at the bottom of the screen. There is a tool called React, if you're not familiar with the webinar. And down at React, you can raise your hand, which will take our attention to you, and we can call on you then. And don't be shy, guys. Don't be shy. Joseph, Dr. Joseph, welcome. Please, go ahead.
All right. Thank you very much for the webinar. Thank you for sharing the link for us to join. I have been working with this ICAP team since 2017. When I got my training, I was a participant at the same time coordinating the application. At the time, they used to scan the document and send it, which require a lot of work at the time. But now, thanks to you, that the ICAP process, the application process, has been modified and going through transformation. So I want to acknowledge the improvement that have been made. Like I posted in the chat room, I think with constant engagement and consultation, we will make it better and make it user-friendly, even when it comes to registration. I just want to acknowledge that your team are doing extremely well. They respond to query on time. They listen and resolve issues relating to registration. So we have outstanding discussion to have it, and I will be waiting and I'm expecting emails so that we can have that discussion. But it is important to keep on following people who are account holders. And I want to suggest that because if you give somebody lessons to practice, there should be some sort of way of monitoring that person during a period. But when I got my ICAP 1 certificate, we practice until it expire, we have to renew. But I did not see any email asking you either to provide some update or to check on you whether you are practicing. And I think it is something that we need to look at. Thank you very much.
Thank you. No, I appreciate your feedback, Mr. Joseph, and particularly, I'm sure my colleagues will be very grateful for your positive feedback, particularly in the responsiveness. I would agree. I hope that most people have that experience. We certainly make an effort to respond in a timely way because we understand it can be an anxious process for people. It can also be an expensive process for people to undertake credentialing. So we certainly take it very seriously, not only the process, but also making sure that we can offer the best service. Your suggestion about checking in, this is really where the credentialing conversation has come. We hope that as we move forward, we'll be able to have and hold more frequent webinars with our constituents, our candidates, either prospective or those who are currently registered with us, so that we can keep that dialogue open about what works well, what's not working so well, how we can improve. We're also very excited that we've just reconstituted the new Global Commission, and we will be moving to a regional structure as well, so that we have a bigger footprint within the certain regions. And that commission is also made up of very senior, very well recognized experts within the sector who will be working with us and guiding us on reviewing the entire processes on a continuous loop, making sure our exams are fit for purpose, that the credentialing is doing what it's meant to do, and to grow the brand and the footprint. Because the more of us internationally that are accredited through the ICAP, the more hopefully employers, governments, and so forth will recognize that particular credential. So that's the intent. We are our own community. It's really important that we try and build that community. The larger we are together, the more influence we can have within the sector. So I have to say I'm pleased that you've had a positive experience and that you would want to continue to engage in that dialogue. I note that we had another hand, Irene. Sorry, Irene, yeah, there we go. I see your hand again. Would you like to ask your question?
Oh, yeah, thank you so much. Good evening from Uganda. I'm glad to be on this call. I've been following this conversation. Personally, I'm not from the medical background, but I am in the education field, and we've been working in schools and communities on the aspect of alcohol and substance use. So we've really seen that there is a lot to be done, and yet more of these substances and drugs are being innovated, new, coming in. And then you look at the laws that we thought that Uganda would pass the law against this alcohol and substance bill, but of course you really see that some institutions inject in a lot of money to fail the passing of the bill, and you really see how challenging it is. But drugs and substances have really drastically affected the health of young people, and I really don't know where the future of our young people are. So I really am glad that I'm on this platform, and I want to take it as a serious issue so that I can gain more knowledge, more skills, and then some courses so that we can create the change that we desire to see in the young people that will take over from us. So I'm glad being here. I really want to be guided more and more and more so that I can be a better person. Thank you.
Thank you. And you have my sympathy, Irene, in terms of, one thing we do know is that the substance use field is not safeguarded against politics, like many things. That there are many interested parties, some wanting to do good in the field, some maybe working against that because of their interests. So it is a challenge always, but I think your message is a very strong one. United together as a professional community, building that workforce, building that evidence base, but also preparing our workforce so they can become strong advocates. And being credentialed really sort of enforces that even more. So I'm delighted you're part of this community and look forward to hearing more and for us to continue these conversations. Thank you for that. We've got a couple of questions which have been asked. One is about the pricing point. I just want to make a comment here about the costing, because we are really super aware that, to charge $100 for treatment or $50 for the prevention and the recovery is a large amount for many professionals who are having to self-finance. Up to recently, till the changes in the administration within the US, which up to recently, as you know, was very generous in terms of its grants. That has changed under the current administration. So there has been a shift really on the business model, and we're trying to pivot to see how can we drive down where previously people might have had the opportunity to get sponsored through the Colombo plan or other means, but we're trying now to look and see how do we get the price point down for the exams. One of the ways to do that is to develop in-country test centers. So we are currently piloting a program of setting up some new test centers in different countries. So we will keep you informed of that as we progress. And please keep an eye, if you've not already signed up to the ICUDDR newsletter, we invite you to do that. Maybe one of my colleagues can put the link in, but that would be one way of keeping appraised. We do have a section in our newsletter about the activities of our center, but we're really trying to push to drive down the costs so that individuals can actually pay for themselves. We also, for the renewal, just so you know, there is currently a reduction. To renew your credential at the moment, it would have been, I believe, $50, but we've actually reduced that to 50%, $25. So if you are thinking about renewing, you've previously had your credential and you think, oh, I'm not sure I can afford that, we have dropped the price to $25 at the moment, $25. And if you're really struggling with that even price, please reach out to us individually. We will have that conversation. We're far more, we are not a non-for-profit organization. We're not in this for the money. We do need some money to keep going because this is a service. As you can see, we need to make sure we can provide that service, but we're not in it to make money. So if we can drive prices down and we can keep it going that way, please let us know any ideas you might have around that. But certainly do talk to us if you're struggling individually but want to take the exam or want to renew and you're struggling financially. We will certainly be able to have a conversation. I can't promise anything, but we certainly can have a conversation with you to see how we can support. The other question that is there, which is, and I think, Sungjoo, you've already thankfully sort of addressed it, which is about the UTC or the UPC or the URC universal curriculum. These are excellent curriculum. There's no question. They've been UNODC reviewed. They've been, put together by, experts in the field. And certainly, self-paced is a great way to do that. Some people don't do so well on self-paced or online, and we understand that. So the alternative is to see whether within your country you could get it sponsored. I know that Columba Plan offers trainers to go into countries and deliver that training in person. So please look at that option. Alternatively, the biggest message here is it's not just about the theory and reading. You really know how to do this in practice, which means you do need to be working in the field. And that's why we have the criteria about the number of hours that you've been working in the field and that you are active in the field. So if you have any worries that you're not sure that you have sufficient time, flying time, do again reach out to us. We'd be happy to talk to you, because the last thing we want is people to take an exam and not be prepared and then feel, pretty bad about that, because it may well be that you just didn't have enough preparation. So we don't want you to prematurely take an exam. We want to give you best options. So hopefully that message has come through. Just looking to see if there's anything else.
So I do want to point out
interest.
the time. So I will
Yes, yeah.
I will be sharing 2 QR codes. On the left, it's the ICUDDR website. You can also access our information on that website as well. But on the right, it leads you to the actual exam process and eligibility requirements. So I'll keep that up while people have questions to ask, but
Thank you.
we have gone over a little bit.
Yeah, thank you. And Kennedy has asked details for the negotiations in terms of, so that would be just our straightforward inquiry email address. So maybe one of my colleagues can put that in, just so you have it to hand before we finish off. Great. So anything else, colleagues, that we need to pick up because we're down to our last 2 minutes and I know everybody's busy, but we hope that this has been helpful. We certainly will pick up the suggestion about surveying and getting more information. Sungjoo will get excited about that because he loves the surveys with me, but we'll certainly be reaching out to you. But please don't be shy. We are here to support. We're here to help. Anything we can do, we're all in this together to build our workforce. We know that we are desperately needed, sadly, still very much globally and within country. So the greater the size of the workforce and the greater the size of the workforce that's credentialed, the more power we have to leverage in our conversations with our politicians, with our educators, and with our employers. So please keep that in mind. Thank you so much. We look forward to continuing the credentialing conversations with you, and thank you for your attendance, whether that was an early morning start or an afternoon or a late evening for you. Have a great rest of your day and stay safe, and look forward to catching up in the future. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, Verna. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Welcome. Have a good day, everyone.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.